Hello there, and welcome to the Average Pundits podcast, your home for all things Premier League. And we have a very interesting topic for today. And as always, I have my co host, Joseph Brody.
How you doing, mate? You alright?
Yeah, not too bad. And for the first time ever, we have die-hard and lifelong Manchester United fan, Lewis Angel. How are we?
I'm good, mate. How we all doing?
Good. How does it feel to finally be on the Average Pundits podcast?
That's good, mate. Long time coming.
So we have a very interesting topic to talk to you all about today. But first, I just want to highlight the absolute phenomenal support on the last podcast that we did on the Newcastle United takeover. Also debuting on Spotify and also getting a lot of love on YouTube. So make sure to follow us on Spotify, the Average Pundits podcast, and subscribe to us on YouTube, the Average Pundits. So shall we get into our transfer rumor-filled podcast debate today?
Yeah, I think it's about time, mate. Having a look at the rumour mill that we've got going today, at the moment, because there's not a lot of live football going on with everything kind of kicking around at the world at the moment, transfers are kind of leading the headlines. You've got transfers, you've got takeovers, but right now the transfer mill is what we're going to focus on. And looking at what Corriere dello Sport are reporting in Italy today, Everton striker Moise Kean is reportedly being linked with a move to Napoli. So if you weren't familiar, Moise Kean started his career over at Juventus, moved over to Everton, and since then he's had a bit of a tough time under the different management styles. I believe he's played now under Marco Silva, Duncan Ferguson, and Carlo Ancelotti. So that's three managers in such a short period of time that he's played under, and he just hasn't seemed to have found his feet. So I think a move back to the Serie A could be quite beneficial. What do you think, Lou?
I don't really think he's cut out for the Premier League just yet. I mean, he's still young. I don't think it's the right time for him to be in the Premier League.
Yeah, I reckon he's somebody who showed so much promise at Juventus. I find it absolutely baffling how they got rid of him. Like, it was got to be one of the most highly touted young strikers in the world, and they let him go for, I think it was it like 30 million they let him go for? Was it under that?
About 30 million.
Yeah.
Around about 30 million, yeah. And I mean, from where his form has picked up from after he left Juventus, he hasn't really done anything significant since joining Everton. And if you're looking at it from that standpoint, Juventus got off really lightly with a 30 million price tag that they had Everton pay for him.
I think it would have been better for him, really, if they would have put him out on a two-year loan or so. But even then, like, having a player that young go to the Premier League out of not many appearances in the Serie A, that's always going to be a risk. So I think these rumours probably have quite a lot of legs behind them. It wouldn't surprise me at all if, given the summer we see him. I mean, Napoli are the name thrown around at the moment, but there might be a little bit of a bidding war. There's obviously a lot of big clubs that could be interested in him.
When it comes to, the sort of younger players that are very promising, especially coming from Premier League clubs now, he's played for two quite significant clubs. I mean, Everton less so than Juventus, but playing for Juventus, scoring for Juventus on numerous occasions. Coming to Everton, not really playing the best that he could. I mean, with this whole pandemic situation, Carlo Ancelotti could have brought the most out of Keane that we're yet to see. So it could have been a definite rise in his career, but we're yet to know. And if he does make the move back to Italy, I don't think that. I think that his reputation in the Premier League will probably hinder any other moves that he might make, unless he does reform his career like Romelu Lukaku did when he moved back to the Serie A.
I think one thing to highlight as well about Moise Kean before drifting on, at the moment, this is according to Transfermarkt, his stats in the Premier League, out of his 22 appearances, he has scored one goal.
Oh.
One.
Wow.
That's for Everton, yeah?
That's for Everton, yeah. 22 appearances, one goal for Everton, apparently, this season.
That's diabolical.
Awful.
That is awful. And then 2 assists in the Premier League, but a total of 3 goal contributions in 22 Premier League appearances. That is not feasible at all for the Premier League.
So you're telling me a striker, a out-and-out striker, is not known for his passing ability, has more assists than goals?
Yeah.
Wow, that is crazy.
At the moment, I'm thinking probably a lifeline back to the not Bundesliga, rather the Serie A is probably going to be the best deal for him right now.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think you'd see any top tier Premier League clubs sniffing around for him at this point.
He is under fire at Everton at the moment because obviously he broke lockdown rules recently, so I don't think he's in their good books as well. So that probably doesn't help.
That is a good point, actually. Yeah, he did break lockdown rules.
Apparently, he went to a party on the weekend.
Yeah, that is definitely not the kind of image which he needs, given his amazing stats.
Yeah.
Not the thing that's going to help him out. Moving on, BBC are also on their rumour mill. They've got from the Sun reporting that Arsenal have apparently offered Chelsea winger Willian to come into the club as a replacement for the outgoing Aubameyang. Now that really doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
I mean, take it with a pinch of salt. Not going to go into too much of the politics behind the credibility of Red Top Papers and the Sun, but I mean, this would be quite a horrible swap if this was to happen. Willian is getting to the twilight stage of his career. I would expect Willian to go to another club and be a bench player, but it would seem that if Arsenal were to sign Willian, he would be a prominent starting player, especially if he's going to quote unquote replace Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, who is obviously probably going to go to either Real Madrid or Barcelona at this point.
I mean, those are the two clubs which seem to be leading the headlines and poking their nose in for him. But I mean, Aubameyang has been. I don't say this lightly. I mean, he's without a doubt Arsenal's best player. But also, I'd probably say he does teeter on that world-class territory as a striker. I think he is a very good player. But having a seasoned Premier League winger, I mean, I'm not no discredit to Willian, but a winger replacing an out-and-out striker. Aubameyang has played out on the left, but I think he is a striker. It just doesn't compute to me. I don't understand why that would be something Arsenal would feel is a good idea. But given Arsenal's recent transfer history, it just screams of Arsenal to me. It screams of an Arsenal thing.
It's definitely the washed up Chelsea players that do end up going to Arsenal. It's, they had Petr Cech, David Luiz, and if they do make the move for Willian, that's the third. So I guess that would be, the washed up, is just the ground for dying careers of Chelsea players, I guess.
God, that's pretty horrendous thing to be known as for a club as Arsenal. I mean, they have fallen so far from grace. I mean, right now, their entire defensive back line is questionable. Their midfield is questionable. Aubameyang and Lacazette are the two biggest assets they've got.
And if they both want to leave.
Yeah, exactly. If we're led to believe what the papers are saying is true, they both want out. So they're in quite a difficult situation. A player which has been rumoured to come into Arsenal and provide a bit more depth is Atletico Madrid's midfield maestro, Thomas Partey. Apparently, a £43 million bid has been lodged by Arsenal for Thomas Partey's services. And apparently he's already mentioned to Diego Simeone that he's not looking to extend his contract. What do we make of that?
I mean, when it comes to Arsenal, I think you can't think of a better fit. David Luiz is known to be a ball-playing defender. He's known for making his way up the pitch, and where his positioning lacks right now, in his defensive awareness, that's where Partey can make up for. Maybe if David Luiz does want to make his way up the pitch, then you've got Partey to fill in for the gaps that he's made, and also they have a returning William Saliba who is on loan at Saint Etienne right now, who they bought and then loaned back. So I think that Arsenal's defensive woes could be saved by the signing of Partey. I think this could be quite a smart move.
As a strong central defensive midfield player that you've seen countless times in the Champions League, I think he was phenomenal against both legs against Liverpool. He was definitely a key player into seeing them at the Champions League. So someone that me and Lewis can definitely appreciate.
Yeah, definitely.
But I feel like for a team like Arsenal, which have definitely lacked midfield stability for a number of years now, he could come in and they need to essentially lock him down and build a team around him, I think, because he is like a solid anchor of the team and can just build the spine around him. So I think it's a good signing. I don't know how realistic it is. The other club which are linked with him is Manchester United. And that's a club which, again, has been maybe crying out for a good defensive midfielder with Matic getting on and other players like Scott McTominay and Paul Pogba and stuff maybe favouring positions further up in the midfield. So I feel like he'd be a good fit at Manchester United as well. But at the end of the day, I think he has to see the point in leaving Atletico. The rumour is he's not signing a contract extension. But right now, Atletico Madrid are a Champions League club. And right now, Arsenal and Manchester United, although they're big Premier League clubs, right now their European football needs a bit of a push in the right direction. So I'd say it's a bit of an upward struggle to maybe convince him in.
Thomas Partey, I think, would be wasted going to Arsenal. I think at the moment, how he's playing is levels above Arsenal. And if I was Partey, I wouldn't want to go to Arsenal as midfield and be the best person there. Sort of like what Fernandes is doing at United. Like, he's come in and everyone's sort of relying on Fernandes at the moment. I wouldn't want to be relying on Thomas Partey.
That is a good point. I mean, because right now, I think Arsenal's only other real credible midfielder, in my opinion, is Lucas Torreira.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like what Lewis just said. You've got someone coming in at 26 years of age that's probably going to have to put the entirety of their midfield on his shoulders, and I'm not sure whether he might want that. That's what he might want. He might want to be the center point of a team now. He might not be that at Atletico right now, and to maybe for him maybe to come to go to Arsenal and be that center point to get this team on his shoulders and lift them to European glory. I mean, it's an interesting prospect for him, I guess.
That was the Express which broke that story of the £43 million bid. Moving on, the Telegraph now are reporting apparently that Barcelona have made midfielder Felipe Coutinho and Ousmane Dembele both available for swap deals in the summer. Both of these players fairly recently came into Barcelona, both for over the value of like 100 million euros. Like, they both came in for massive amounts of money, and now they're apparently both players are being able to leave the club. I think Barcelona's transfer dealings recently have been a bit off the ball. I think they've been extremely hit and miss. Griezmann is another player who's come in recently at Barcelona and has been a bit hit and miss as well. But having Coutinho and Dembele both available to leave and potentially come to Premier League clubs, I think is an interesting concept. Obviously, we saw Felipe Coutinho once before at Liverpool. Ousmane Dembele, what do you think would be a good career move for him?
I feel like a move. I mean, I think he could. There's so much for him to learn being a 22-year-old. There's still so much that he can learn and get under his belt with the right tutelage and the right manager, the right players around him. You'd have thought Lionel Messi would be the one to kind of take him under his wing, playing in a similar position. But no, like Ousmane Dembele has been hit with a lot of injury troubles. But I mean, as a Liverpool fan, I would happily swap someone for Ousmane Dembele. I think he's a phenomenal talent, and maybe to see him in the Premier League with one of the clubs would be, it could show Barcelona what they missed out on.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think there are a lot of big Premier League clubs which would value his playing style. I think clubs like Arsenal and Chelsea. I think, to be honest with you, I even think Liverpool could value from him, even though Liverpool's front three right now is pretty solid. I feel like if Liverpool wanted to cash in on Salah in the summer and possibly get Barcelona or Real Madrid knocking for him, I think Ousmane Dembele would be a great replacement. But Coutinho, I think, is more of an interesting case. I think Ousmane Dembele at only 22, he's got his whole career ahead of him. Whereas Coutinho right now, I think he's 27, 28, and he's already had the Premier League once. Personally, I don't see Liverpool coming back in for him, but I do see a couple of Premier League clubs being interested. It wasn't too long ago that recently Chelsea were apparently the club which were going to be throwing a bid in for him. What do you think Chelsea's chances of getting him?
Who would they swap for him now?
See, that's the point. I think if it was a swap deal at Chelsea, I think Barcelona would want to try and take one of the young players out of them, because right now, I mean, players like Reece James, Tomori, Mason Mount, Tammy Abraham, I think all these players are desirable players. But I think if Chelsea were going to do anything, I think they'd just try and throw money at Coutinho, I'd say.
That's probably the smartest option if you're Chelsea to throw money at. Like with Dembele, if, for example, I think he'd be a great fit at United. For example, Rashford's out at the moment. Don't really want to rely on Dan James. I think he's a bit not great, if I'm honest. So I think just throwing a bit of money at Dembele, I think he'd fit in nicely. Rashford on the left, Martial up top, Dembele on the right.
It could be a really good front three. Obviously, Martial has had a little bit of international experience playing alongside Dembele anyway, as well as Paul Pogba. So
I forgot about him.
He could be a very interesting little acquisition for United. There is another right winger which United are massively interested in, which we will drift on a little bit in this podcast. But yeah, so Dembele and Coutinho right there, those two players which could potentially be finding their way to the Premier League. Another interesting link in the rumour mill at the moment is Bayern Leverkusen's playmaker Kai Havertz, only 20 years of age, and apparently a target for Chelsea and also Liverpool. The Athletic recently reported that Chelsea are interested, and Liverpool have been interested for quite a long time as well. I think it's a crime, I think, to forget that Chelsea have also already signed Hakim Ziyech, and I've got him coming in the summer. So Coutinho and Kai Havertz, both central attacking midfield players, and they've already got Mason Mount as well. I think they may be a bit overboarded if they're going for Kai Havertz as well. I think it could be quite an interesting acquisition for Chelsea, but I don't necessarily think it's the right thing to go for. Reece, where do you think would be a good destination for Kai Havertz?
I mean, I would happily take him at Liverpool. I've been crying out for a creative midfielder for ages now. I think a creative midfielder at the helm of our attack could be what we needed, or unless we don't, we don't manage to get him. Roberto Firmino could be that guy, but because we could be in for another top tier German player from the Bundesliga. I'm not sure if he'll come up later in this podcast, but we could talk about him. Kai Havertz, I think, he definitely needs to be a part of a team that is willing to build around him, that is willing to grow with him, and that has enough ambition to go for European spots, whether that be in the Premier League, whether that be a bigger club like Bayern Munich or Borussia Dortmund, or maybe he might want to stay at Bayer Leverkusen and be that one club man, and make Leverkusen build their team around him.
There's a lot of talent which is coming out of the Bundesliga at the moment, and obviously for a long period of time, Dortmund and Bayern Munich have been the two destinations, mainly Bayern Munich, even robbing players out of Dortmund. But it's now that I feel like players in that league, a lot like players in the English leagues, are starting to see the benefits of maybe going elsewhere. So I feel like Liverpool, I think, could greatly benefit off him. But also there is always that potential risk that Bayern Munich do snap him up. It would be an interesting player to see in the Premier League. I think his creativity could potentially, in a few years, put him on a level of like superstardom level attacking midfielders like De Bruyne, like Bruno Fernandes, these kind of talents. I think he would be an excellent acquisition for anyone. Another player which is also being reported right now to go to Chelsea or Manchester United, I think there are quite a few more other clubs which would be interested in him, is West Ham midfielder Declan Rice. I'm going out on a limb straight away and saying that I do not want Declan Rice at Manchester United.
I can agree with you on that strongly.
I don't feel like he's a good fit at all. I feel like he just reminds me of Eric Dyer. He reminds me of the trajectory of Eric Dyer. Like, when Eric Dyer was in flying form for Tottenham, I remember thinking at the time, God, this would be a great player to have at United because he can play defence, he can play in the midfield, he's versatile. I think that's what I saw a little bit at the start of with Declan Rice. But as time's gone on, I think he's a West Ham player personally.
Yeah, he's very like mid-level team, but with him being young, English, showing a little bit of potential, not much. You're looking at a price tag around like 60 to 70 million, which is ridiculous if someone like Thomas Partey can go for 45.
Exactly. I mean, is it worth either spending all of that money on an English player out of an English rival club just because they're English, or going and getting somebody who is legitimately world class for the same kind of money. In my opinion, that's a no-brainer.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're a team like, I mean, Manchester United probably will not go for him. They might go for another centre midfielder, unless Pogba decides to, act like an actual man again and play for the club that he wanted to play for again. Chelsea could do with another central defensive midfielder. I don't see. I mean, Kante is a phenomenal player. Another player like Declan Rice could be one to learn off Kante, to have those two midfielders, and then Ziyech just in front of those, and then Arsenal are also linked with him, so that could be someone that could partner with Partey and man the midfield.
I think, yeah, like you said, I mean, Arsenal and Chelsea, I think, are the clubs which I think personally in the summer will invest a lot into Declan Rice. It'll be interesting to see where he goes. I'm pretty sure he is going to leave West Ham. I think West Ham will end up signing him, but it'll be interesting to see where he ends up.
I feel like they're going to have to, they might have to sell him, because there's so much money sitting in one player that they might have to sell that to get way more assets that they can then build upon.
That is a good point. I mean, the Sun, again, I think they reported that he was valued at 70 million. I'm not sure where they're pulling that figure from, but
that's ridiculous.
The kind of money which is getting paid for English players now, I mean, I don't know if it would go up to 70, but I'm pretty sure they'd get a lot out of West Ham for it. Well, the West Ham would get out a lot of a top club for it, rather.
English players have always been expensive. How do you think we managed to sell Dominic Solanke for 20 million?
Yeah, that was nothing short of a miracle. That was incredible. Moving on again, two Manchester United topics I want to talk about. Paul Pogba leaving Manchester United. This is something which is just constantly every season that we're going on about, but this summer it could potentially be a reality. I think right now it is literally 50-50. I think we know where his head is. I think he wants out, but I think whether after the issues of the coronavirus is happening and stuff like that, which that's brought about to sport, whether clubs can afford him, I think is one argument. And I feel that the other argument is going to be more in the direction of essentially who the club is that's going to come in for him. Because I feel like his destinations that he wants to do are Juventus and Real Madrid. And right now, it's whether they can actually kind of muster up the fee for him, or whether they actually want him at the club. If he stays at United, he's an asset. If he leaves, he's a big amount of money coming into the club. I really don't mind whichever way this goes. Personally, if he wants out, I'm more in the opinion of, all right, let's shift him aside. But if he stays at the club and he can actually vow to help us, then I feel like he's an asset. What do you think about it, Lou? I mean, as a fellow United fan, you must have an opinion on Pogba.
It's got to the point where I just sort of don't care about Pogba anymore. Like you said, every season, 1 minute he wants to stay, the next minute he wants to go. If he stays, we run the risk of him doing what he's done for the last 2 seasons of like the mediocre performance, walking up and down the pitch. But now we've got in Fernandes. Seeing Pogba go isn't as much of a worry by looking at what Fernandes can do.
Yeah.
But if Pogba does go, we're looking at what, 100+ million?
Oh, without a doubt, mate. I think United would probably push it forward and go. I think around over 130 million, I think, is what I reckon we'd manage to get for him.
Yeah, see, and personally, I don't think we need him anymore if he's just going to perform like he has been doing, like half-assed performances with the likes of Fred and McTominay both improving at the rate they have.
Yeah, I'd agree with it. I mean, I feel like we'd probably maybe look to sign someone to replace him straight away, but I feel like that money going out of the club just comes back and gets straight invested into the player I'm going to talk about now as well, in Jadon Sancho. Right now, he's the English trophy in world football. He's the one which I think maybe every club might not be directly targeting, but every club would like to have. I feel like Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, Manchester United, Tottenham, all of these clubs would love to have a player like Jadon Sancho at the club. In the Bundesliga, as of this season, he's made a total of 23 appearances. 21 of those he started, and he scored 14 goals and has had 15 assists. I think that's nothing short of a top player, is it? At 20 years old, that is exactly the kind of player you want at your club.
Absolutely. I mean, you've got Kylian Mbappe's of the world that are lighting the world of fire, and then you've got someone who is from your own nation in Jadon Sancho. He could be the figurehead of the English national team for years to come. And to have that figurehead at your team in the Premier League is basically having the face of English football for the next 5 years. The amount of, I mean, looking at it from a Manchester United standpoint, a club that's very much run like a business, the amount of merchandising that you would sell, the amount of ticket sales that would go up, the amount of the passion that would go back into the club in terms of support would be phenomenal.
I agree 100%. Like you said, the face of English football for the next 5 years. I think that is arguably like the perfect way to sum up the acquisition of signing him. Right now, I think England's maybe this is the whole argument in its own right. This is like a separate podcast, but England's top assets right now on that list, you've got players like Jadon Sancho, Raheem Sterling, Kane, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Harry Maguire. These are top players for England right now. James Maddison and Grealish as well on that list. And right now, any club which has these players as an English club, it's only going to be a plus for them because it's a homegrown hero essentially in your own back door, which is something which is interesting. The fee paying for Jadon Sancho, I think he comes in for like well over 100 million. So whoever makes him the signing, he could become the most expensive Premier League footballer in history.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like there's only a handful of clubs who could do that. I feel like it's like United, Liverpool, and Man City are the top three, which I think could manage it.
If we eventually ship Pogba off, we could invest that money straight into Jadon Sancho.
Yeah, I'd say that's exactly what I think we should be doing. I mean, with Pogba showing that due to all of his injuries this season, he's arguably been expendable anyway. You may as well go and reinvest that in somebody who's going to directly improve the team, who's going to be there for the long haul. I mean, now only 20 years old, I want to see a 5-year contract slapped straight away on him. I don't want to be messing around and saying, okay, we want to have you for a couple of years and then ship you to Real Madrid. I want it to be, we want you here for the long haul. We don't want you leaving. What can you do for the club? That's essentially the model exactly that I want to do for if I was Manchester United trying to sign him. So
100%.
I think with all of those at the moment, those are the top signings that we've listed at the moment that are being reported in the world. If you guys have any opinions on these signings, you can get interactive with us on Instagram. You can talk to us on Twitter. You can talk to us in the YouTube comments as well. And you can get a hold of us via our business email. I think on my end, I think that's everything I've got for today, lads.
Yeah, please do get in touch with us. Comment down below. Who would you like to see your team sign in the summer transfer window? What are your opinions on the current climate in the Premier League? Thank you so much to Lewis for being on this podcast and giving his 2 cents.
That's all right. Cheers for having me.
So yeah, if you would like to subscribe to our YouTube channel, for those watching on YouTube, please do turn on the notifications for when we upload on every Wednesday. Follow us on Spotify, The Average Pundit, so you can listen on the go and download our podcast straight to your phone or any other devices that you have. Follow us on Twitter at the it's the Pundits Average on Twitter. I almost messed that up. And Instagram, The Average Pundits. Our business email for any inquiries to get in touch with us and to come on the podcast, you can come on the Skype calls, theaveragepundits@outlook.com. Thank you very much for listening or watching if you're on YouTube. And we shall see you next time.